I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Thanks for having me.
This is a really big deal, Damsel is. How'd you come to be a part of this like very sort of like epic fantasy action film?
Yeah, well, it all started with a conversation, sort of getting to know you conversation with Juan Carlos, the director, who I was led to believe was, I knew he was kind of doing this sort of like upside down fairy tale, upside down damsel in distress story. Um, and I was sort of led to believe that maybe he was going to want to subvert the genre in all ways, including musically. And I was sort of pleasantly surprised to find that when talking to him, he was just like, "Listen, I just love the orchestra. I want this movie to have a strong thematic score and something timeless." And it was, not just for me. I think for sort of films in general, it almost like I jumped at it because it seemed like almost like a radical approach at this point to actually go symphonic and go traditional. Everything is sort of bending over backwards to subvert the genre in every way possible, including the music. So to be told like go unleash something symphonic and thematic and melodic, it was like, oh, okay, like shit, yeah, let's do this. It's not that's sort of more the exception these days.
Yeah, and I mean, I've got to imagine that like it's crazy because I mean, this is like his first feature film in a really
In a
long
while.
while. So I got to imagine like that puts a little bit of pressure on you as the composer, like for somebody's, essentially their comeback film with also like I was going to say rising star, but like let's be fair, Millie Bobby Brown is a star at this.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So like does that put pressure on you as the composer?
I felt enough pressure without having to project any of his his career onto mine. No, I mean, I just wanted it to be great, really. And he was so passionate, and his passion was kind of contagious, um and doing something sincere, that was the other thing. There was nothing ironic about the assignments, and I think in the best of fantasy, that's kind of the case. I think by its nature, it's unironic, and this is the kind of this is of course there's pressure, but this is the kind of score that if I was 12 years old and you told me to go do a fantasy score, that would have been the dream. So I tried not to focus too much on that aspect and just make it great, or as good as possible.
Well, and I mean, like the film itself gives you so many opportunities and things to work with. I mean, you've got a dragon, you've got a cavern, you've got evil, mother and mothers-in-law.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there are all these things that like you really it has all of the aspects of like fantasy action that you could possibly want. What was the thing that you latched on to like first?
Definitely Millie's character, Elodie, in fact, like latched onto her doubly and did something that's like by the textbook a very foolish thing to do, which is in the first meeting where I played them any music, I played them two thematic ideas, both for her, your character. Usually you want to like start strong and say this is the idea, this is her theme. But I felt very strongly that like in the beginning of the film, she's still a child, and she's kind of a passenger to her circumstance, and that there was essentially two journeys she was going on. She was going on the journey that she thinks she's going on, which is this outward journey that she's you know she's trying to be optimistic about, and there is a lot about her character that is optimistic and wants to go find something out there, some adventure. She thinks she can find her story out in the world. And then there's also this kind of inner voice, and it's leading her to an internal journey, which I think in a way is what the film is really about, which is somebody has to go to down into some dark caves and confront a beast there, and figure out how to harness its power in order to really become herself by the end of the film. So I basically laid out two themes, and said, I think these are both valid, and I think at the end of the film they'll come together, which was a big promise, but was fun getting there and figuring out how that happened.
I love the fact that even if I didn't know the broad outlines of the film going into it, as the princess like
Hmm.
walks up, you hear that as referred to, the phantom choir
Hmm.
begin to vocalize. It's, you know, that it's like, oh, that's never a good sound to hear in a film like this. But you also use it in ways other than like the the wordless choir, where frequently it's used to like be terrifying, but you subvert it as the film subverts other things by making it at times kind of like hopeful.
Mm.
Like how, like, what are the challenges in like making that sort of switchback?
Yeah, well, the choral, I think in some ways it really is a choral central score, and we had three choirs or three vocal identities. We had like our big choir that is there for all the grand moments and adding weight. Then we have the Phantom Princess Choir, which you mentioned, which I think is serving two purposes really. Which what we did was we took nine of our singers from the big choir, nine female singers, to represent these generations of princesses who had been sacrificed to the dragon, and the idea was we have them sing together, and rather than the typical thing with a choir, which is like have all these voices present a homogeneous sound, we wanted to isolate the individual voices. So basically had everyone sing together, but sort of barricaded and close mic'd like I am now, so that you could really lean into individual voices and play with the image so they could sort of be around Elodie, and obviously there's a literal link to the film where she does sort of visualize these princesses at certain points, and so there is that, but I also wanted it to be this thread that you mentioned, like as she's even in sort of optimistic grand moments, that there's this thread of doubt, not only maybe literally these ghosts sort of warning her, but also Elodie's sort of internal kind of doubt about the whole situation, reticence. You know, I've worked with Hans Zimmer throughout the years, and he's a producer of the score on this film. And one thing he always instilled in me was the idea of protect your main character, meaning don't let your main character be stupid, essentially. Like let the audience understand the decisions they're making. So the idea I had was that, I wanted the audience to be able to understand that Elodie could get wrapped up in this fantasy herself and what she could be, but always have this reticence, and it's very relatable. I think everyone has had that thing where they, at the pit of their stomach, there's like something's not right about the situation, but no, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. And then maybe it turns out not to be great. And so I wanted to protect her integrity. I mean, she is a child, but I didn't want her to be that naive that she that she didn't have these doubts, and she does have that mixture of like this all seems too good to be true, but she really wants it to be true.
Absolutely. And like you have worked, as you just mentioned, with Hans Zimmer on some like very epic films, most recently the two Dune films.
Mhm.
And um I'm curious, is like, what do you take from that that you bring, like you've done, your own scores for other
Mhm.
films, but like what do you do when you're bringing it to like something that is, I guess, this high visibility? Like how have you taken like what you've learned doing like these epics uh or things like Wonder Woman that are tied to like a greater property, and bringing them to, a film on this scale as opposed to like the films you might have scored on your own previously.
Right, right. I see what you mean. Yeah, I mean, well, I've been so lucky to get to work with him, who's, he is a genius storyteller, and through him get to work with other amazing filmmakers and be in those rooms. And some of these things, I've learned so much. There's tons of things I take with me consciously, and I'm sure many, many times more subconsciously that I've absorbed from that experience. In regards to sort of what I think you're getting at, which is like the sort of epic nature of those films and sort of applying it to that. Um, I, I mean, the main thing I take from Hans is like be a filmmaker first and a storyteller first. And so in a way, it's whatever the story demands, and in this case, maybe it did demand a symphonic sound, and strong themes. But I will say the sort of thematic identity, I think I think was important, something that could maybe hold up in terms of the dynamics of of a film like that. Can it get as big as possible? Can it get as small as possible? Can it sort of exist in those two worlds? I've seen him really kind of work an idea into submission, like the sort of the big themes in Dune and Wonder Woman, and how this would work, and really spend so much time on that and figuring out what exactly are the right notes, what are the notes that are going to be able to encompass all the different aspects of the story that we need to tell. So I think there was probably a little bit of that. There was some of trying to apply, that kind of that kind of effort, that of trying to figure out, like, trying to find something airtight, really, a solid motif or piece that can hold up, uh, under scrutiny, and can hold up in so many different areas of the film, because there was a lot of story to tell in this. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's
No,
best I can do.
absolutely. And I mean, to me, like the score for Damsel sounds and feels as if it's like the natural culmination to like some of the stuff that you've been doing lately, which is a lot of um genre programming that does sort of like subvert the norms. I'm thinking obviously of like the Last of Us, but also things like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which are, like it's taking ideas that you think you know how they work, and they're turning them at least 90 degrees, if not a solid 180. And is that what attracts you to things like this, where you're not just the usual sort of programming, I guess?
Yeah, well, I mean, that all goes to the storytelling, and I think what connects, Damsel and Mr. and Mrs. Smith is that they're both playing with the genres that they're operating nearby, or within. They're playing with them, but lovingly. Like, there is a subversion, but it's not. There's no snickering at the source material. It's
Not a
or
parody by any
it's not a parody, and something I tried to bring to both is like a mix of modern and something classic. I would say this one skews more towards the classic, and that was more of my job, in that case. But yeah, definitely. I think, even if I was asked to do something like straight up the middle, I don't know how to do it without injecting some of myself into it, and I think hopefully it's just you get in line with whoever's making the film, and you feel like you understand what they're trying to do with it, and just get simpatico with that.
Absolutely. So, like, what are you working on now?
I'm just finishing up two films. I'm finishing up a Barry Levinson film called Alto Nights. which is a true story of the nationwide mafia, starring Robert De Niro, and that's been in dual roles actually, and that's been really fun. And we just actually scored yesterday. We recorded strings and brass and winds yesterday and the day before. So I'm very excited about that. And then also just finished up a documentary about Jim Henson for Ron Howard, uh, which is great, and I'm excited for people to see because who doesn't love Jim Henson? And got to do like a very colorful score for that, and I mean both those guys, both Ron and Barry I mean some just amazing, amazing filmmakers and other storytellers for me to learn from. And yeah, it's been great. It's been great to sort of bounce back and forth on all these things this year.
Oh man, that sounds like a wonderful start to this year.
Yeah,
Well, congratulations on all that. I can't wait to see those. I did dearly love Damsel, and I can't wait to see what you
thank you.
musically for these upcoming projects. And
Thanks, man.
David, I want to thank you so much for spending time this evening speaking to me. This has been a real delight.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. Have a good rest of your day, sir.
You too, man.
Bye bye.
Bye.